conversation here. I may need to, let's see, I may need to restart this if you're all not hearing this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that should be kept picking it up. Weird. So normally there's loads of comments, but as soon as I ask someone to give me a comment to just let me know whether you can hear me or not, I can't see a sort of a new comment. Oh, we got sound. Thank you. Thank goodness for that. Okay. So the introduction, I was trying. There was a delay on the comments. Oh, hello, Prince. How you doing? The introduction I was trying to give there before switching on my damn microphone was that I want to address the specific things that are going wrong at KCC at the moment. I believe KCC are screwing things up quite badly. And some of the things they're doing, really shouldn't be happening. And I'm specifically talking about sending 2NLs to the wrong cases. I can forgive the odd mistake, and particularly at a time when they're clearly trying to do their best. I understand that. I don't want to criticize KCC for trying to do their best. And as I've told you before, I speculated that I think what they've done is they've moved people from doing some jobs, like, for example, the document procedure, the people processing the documents are no longer doing that work, right? So those people have been put onto doing other work. And they're probably not that used to doing that work. And I think those people might be making mistakes. They're not used to doing scheduling of interviews, for example. And so what's happened is that they're actually sending 2NLs out to some cases that are not even current yet. And they were doing that in December, and but it's continuing into January. And there's some wacky stuff going on. Now, most of the embassies have caught that. And I'll explain that to you in a moment. I'll show you the data. But they won't always catch it because, the staff at the embassy are not necessarily that switched on either, right? So they really shouldn't be doing this. At some point, KCC need to say, look, we need to fix the problems here. So, okay, let me show you some data to explain what I mean. So let's see. Let me show you my screen here for a start. Okay, so for example, as an example of what I'm trying to show here, let me just pop over this side. You can see here, now this is SA numbers, SA case number 1147. Okay, so that's actually okay. All of those cases in SA are current for February, and none of those are bad in terms of ready. They're all ready cases. They're cases that have been sent out, and they are current, and so that's a good thing, right? So, but if we switch on in transit, and we have a look at the lowest case or the highest case number that's received in transit, okay, so SA is actually still fine. So SA, cool, no problem. I was just looking at this data before. Now, if I look at Africa, for example, switch off SA. And we go down to the bottom of Africa, what we'll see is some weird stuff going on. Oh, for goodness sake, I wish I could learn to use this properly, but okay, so ready in transit, so 19,307 in transit, that makes sense. 19,989 up to 20,000. Actually, I think what's happening here is that the file is being cut off, because I know for a fact, let me show you one of these other pages. Yeah, look, hit this one, for example. This case number, AF 56427, is in transit, right? That case won't be current for months from now. Why the hell is it in transit? It's not the only case. There are a number of cases like that. They're actually not marked in this file. This is an extract of the SEAC data, but I think that's probably because either Frank or Save Diversity Visa, whoever ran this file, I think it was on the SDV site, probably cut off the numbers too soon, thinking, okay, there's no point in scraping numbers above 20,000, which is probably true. Either that or I've got a filter set wrong. But there is something here in Oceania which actually shows in the file as wrong. Oceania for February is current up to 800, I believe it is. So why are those two cases, not only have they been sent to the embassies, but the embassies have accepted the cases, which they shouldn't have done. And in fact, I think I know the gentleman whose case that is. So you know, there are some mistakes being made by KCC. They shouldn't have sent these cases out. They shouldn't be sending 2NLs to people that are not current yet. The embassy shouldn't be interviewing those people. Okay, they might do. They could interview someone. So let's say this guy at AF 56,000 turns up for interview in February, because it's probably scheduled for February. What happens then, right? By law, he's not supposed to be, that case is not supposed to be issued a visa, and probably won't be current for months from now. But if that person has his medical interview prior to the interview, attends his interview in February, and is told, then one of two things will happen. Either the embassy will move the appointment, but his medical could expire, right? That's going to cost the guy money for no good reason. Or they'll do the interview and say, okay, we can't issue your visa. You'll be on AP until then. And that person will have to repeat his interview, his medical interview, the medical, which will incur more costs. Or the embassy could, in a fit of stupidity, actually issue that case, which would be wrong. That person's not entitled to receive the visa. So, so this is pretty bad. The other thing that's going on is that we've seen cases go into in-transit status, where those cases would normally be able to log into the ESC page and see the appointment schedule. That's the sequence of events. You're sent the 2NL at almost the precise time you're being sent the 2NL. Your case will start to show in transit. They do those in mini batches, like, you know, at KCC. So they might have, you know, 200 cases they're sending 2NLs to. They send the 2NLs, they press the button on sending the 2NLs as a batch, and they also set the status to in transit on SEAC. And then the embassies come in and they're supposed to accept those cases, and they modify those cases from in transit to ready status. That's the embassy that does that, right? And so sometimes we see in transit, sometimes we don't even see in transit, because the time period between the 2NL being sent and the embassy marking the status as ready is too quick. We don't even notice, but actually it is happening. All the cases go into in transit. But what's happened for a reasonable number of cases, I know of several cases myself, is that they've sent the status out to in transit. The person whose case it is may or may not have received a 2NL. In at least one case I know that I've talked to directly, I advised this person to go speak to KCC, and KCC confirmed, yeah, you've got an appointment set up, but that person's ESC page didn't have the 2NL showing. So without being able to check that, he actually didn't know the interview date and time until he actually contacted KCC and said, what's going on? And they said, yeah, you know, here you go. It's February the whatever, and here's the time. That's when your interview is booked for. It's nuts. It shouldn't be happening. Now, what's going on? As I say, I think it's just general mistakes. I don't think it's bad intention by any means by KCC. I don't think they're intending to screw this up, but they're screwing it up for sure. So it's a bit worrying. We want them to act as fast as possible. We want, you know, I'm very pleased that they've moved resources around. I'm pretty convinced now that that's what they've done. I speculated about this before, as I said, but I'm pretty convinced with all the signs that I'm seeing. I'm pretty convinced that that's what we're seeing. And they're probably enduring a certain amount of COVID sickness in terms of resources. So maybe they're short-staffed. Maybe key staff members who would normally be sort of overseeing this process. Maybe the key staff members are out. I don't know. But the point is, the law prescribes a certain method of working. And with regard to the lottery rank number, which is the case number, the law is very clear. Cases are supposed to be processed and interviewed, etc., in a case number order. And they certainly can't be issuing visas to non-current cases, right? So KCC, get your act together. You really need to. It's beyond a joke now. So the other thing that I think is significant is that we're not seeing enough 2NLs. We've seen something like 50 or 60 2NLs being sent out today. It's not enough. We need to see, hundreds of 2NLs going out. And I appreciate that what they're doing. They sent a few out yesterday. They're sending a few out today, but less than 100 interviews over the 2 days of processing. So, tomorrow's Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I would expect maybe they're going to send some more 2NLs out on each of those days, perhaps. Or we'll see no activity for a day or two, and then there'll be a larger batch, something like that. But they really need to get their act together. They should have finished all of the February 2NLs by now. They haven't. The holiday was in the way. We want them to be sending 2NLs, so I'm not going to complain about that. But they do need to step on the gas. If they don't step on the gas, then we're going to have a pretty bad year. And then the other thing, just very briefly before coming live here, I had a quick online chat with Jesse Bless, and I'm going to speak to Jesse because make my feelings clear to the other lawyers as well. But I think it's fairly clear that there are some embassies who are behaving in a way that is not justified, right? So Sydney Embassy is an example. I know there's a surge of Omicron virus in Australia, and Australia has been extremely strict up to now, or up to recently, about how they handled the virus, particularly, but back when the main concern was about COVID Delta variant. Whereas the Omicron virus spreads much fast, but the data at the moment says that it's not as deadly. Okay, but if, in America we got 1 million people a day catching the virus, that's obviously going to lead to a lot of deaths. But so in Australia, maybe there's a little bit of concern. But the other thing that the Sydney Embassy are doing is saying, well, we're in the middle of moving, so we're not going to be scheduling interviews now. Well, that's bullshit. I move house in a day, right? I've been in office moves where very large offices of hundreds of people, thousands of people actually, have moved over a weekend. This is America. They can get stuff done, and I'm sure it's the same in Australia. I don't believe that Australia has got such difficult times in moving an office that that they can't plan ahead and work up until the last minute, and then have a cutover over the weekend, and then from the Friday to the Monday they're in one office to the next office. It should be like that, right? It is absolutely invalid to suggest that they're not going to interview people because they're moving the office. So if you've got a COVID concern, then talk about that, but don't tell us that because you're not because you're moving, you're not scheduling any cases. That's bullshit. So Sydney, you're on my hit list. And normally Sydney is pretty good, right? They've done well in the past. This is nonsense. Kathmandu, another embassy. People, now, I have to take this with a pinch of salt, but people generally are saying, oh, there's very little COVID in Nepal. And the official statistics are showing, very few cases and very few deaths, etc. So, okay, maybe that's true. People are telling me that most businesses and shops, etc., are open normally, and that the vaccination rate, although the official data for Nepal says that about 30% of the population are fully vaccinated, local people have told me in a couple of cases, they've actually got a fairly high vaccination rate. So, why then is Kathmandu Embassy sending out responses saying, we're not doing any interviews right now, and we'll do that as soon as we can, right? With no projection of a date, with no sense of urgency for interviewing cases that have a deadline, September 30th of this year, by which they must be processed. No sense of urgency, right? It's not okay. It's also not okay for the Department of State to let people in Afghanistan languish, with no information about how they're supposed to process their cases, or Baghdad, for which Curtis Morrison has already started a lawsuit for about 25 people, or various other embassies where there's difficulties and there is no help or information coming out from those embassies. This needs to be sorted out. So Department of State, pull your finger out. KCC, fix your bloody problems. Embassies, wake the hell up and stop making silly excuses, so that we can get on with this, right? It's only fair that we get on with this. Now, I've always said to people, immigration is a privilege, not a right. When you win the diversity lottery, you're told straight away you're not guaranteed a visa. None of you should be under any illusions about that. But that is not okay to just piss away people's opportunity of a lifetime because you're moving your office, or because you're a little scared to open your front office because there's COVID virus around. It's not okay. It's not okay to just ignore a bunch of people who are asking, what the hell do we do? Our embassy is closed. Where do we go? How do we fix this? It isn't okay for embassies to say, they're only going to interview locals. It's not okay. None of that is okay. That needs to be fixed. So yeah, Jesse, I'm glad you're waiting there in the wings. I'm sure Curtis, I'm sure Chuck, I'm sure all the good lawyers out there are sort of eyeing up this behavior by the various players in this game to figure out, who needs suing first. So there you go. Okay, so hopefully you've all been had to stream. Hopefully you've all been carefully avoiding asking questions. I haven't had a look. Oh, hang on. Sydney has moved embassy and they mentioned it's not finished being built. Yeah, no, it's bullshit. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a business? I mean, I work in a business, and we run payroll for three or 400,000 people. Can you imagine if we say, no, we're not going to do the payroll because we're moving and we didn't think ahead, so we haven't set up the network and our desks are not ready, and bloody hell, it's not okay. It's not okay. Australia here, yeah. Nguyen, nice to see you again. Do you think the embassy followed the tiered approach unofficially so nobody can sue the government for this? Right, there is I was slightly bemused, Nguyen, when I saw the lawyers' reaction, and lawyers that I admire and respect and like very much. Curtis and Chuck, both reacted in this way. Sort of grabbing on a piece of testimony which talked about the embassies have the right to apply a tier 4 prioritization. They were not specifically told not to do that, right? But the original announcement when tier 4 was taken down said that the embassies have the right to sort of determine their own priority schemes, etc. They do. They have the right to assess local conditions and decide how much capacity they've got. But they can't just arbitrarily, in my opinion, from a moral perspective, say, well, we'd rather do those cases than these cases. I don't think that's right. Now, whether the lawyers can turn that into a lawsuit or not, that's another question. One thing is being morally inept and incorrect, and another thing is being legally, liable for your inaction or your decisions, which are made without justification. So yeah, it's something that they may, I think they are doing. I think there are some embassies that are probably applying that sort of mentality. because we spent 6 to 9 months or whatever it is with that mentality. The tier 4 was publicized and it was in place. So yeah, they're probably sort of applying that. The way they would do that is they would have to report to KCC how many interview spaces they have in any given month. And of course, they could just say, look, maybe they've got 100 spaces, but they say, actually, we'd rather give 80 spaces to that other visa type, and we'll only give 20 to DV. Well, that's a problem if there's 40 or 50 people that want and are qualified for the interview this month, right? It means that people have got to wait an extra month, and it will build up a backlog. So they're digging a hole, and the sooner they stop digging that hole and digging a backlog hole, the better it is for everyone. They need to actually be accelerating, not slowing down. So can anybody sue the government? That's a question for the lawyers. I don't know, Noyan, whether they can be held liable, whether it's the sort of inaction or decision that's bad enough that they could be told by a judge to do something. The other thing is that timing is critical. I thought Judge Mehta's reaction to the lawsuits that we saw was pretty important for us to take notice of. He a number of times made statements and made decisions based around his understanding that the being selected for the DV lottery is not a guarantee of a win, and that the government have the right to organize their work how they want. So if the government said, oh, well, we're not going to do any cases, we're only going to do minimum cases in January and February and March and April, it's at what point is the damage that they're causing irreparable harm? I think that's the legal point at which the lawyers need to get involved. We can see the damage being done, but it's like watching a slow motion crash right now. And being able to prove when the damage that is being done to the overall process is so harmful and so deliberate and so negligent that now a lawsuit can show standing and saying, yes, here's an individual person or group of people who could have expected to have been interviewed by now, but they haven't because of the actions of the government in the embassies or KCC or Department of State. I'm not sure we're there yet, which is why I think Jesse Bless's opportunity to actually use his previous contacts to try and sort of negotiate might be good. But frankly, the Department of State have not shown that they're, and the lawyers that work for them have not shown much willingness to negotiate and cooperate. I don't know why. I don't know much about Belgrade, Serbia in terms of what they're doing right now. Ankara Embassy will also move its location soon. Hope this is the reason why they're almost silent. I hope this is the reason why they're almost silent. I hope it's not the reason. That's not a good excuse, Noyan. Okay, they're going to move their embassy, but again, you can set up your network, you can set up your computers, you can set up your desks and everything else. Do that ahead of time and just move over the weekend. Just tell your staff to put all their personal possessions in a box, have people come in and move filing cabinets. You can do all of that over a weekend. It doesn't take any time. Okay, they don't want to do it over a weekend. Give them a couple of days, during the week. But it's not okay to just, sort of delay people for months. It's nuts. Kate, if we move our interview by changing a current address to Sydney to London, how long would it take to get the 2NL if we're current? So if we change in January, would it be February, March? I can't guess that, Kate. I can't offer you any certainties. In the old days, with a good working system where KCC were operating in an understandable way, I could tell you. But right now, I can't tell you. Because it's just, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Why does my friend get 2NL for January, but the case number is, so the case number is, well, actually, no, your case, Oh, for January. I was going to say that case number is current for February. February EU numbers go up to 13,000. Well, he's 12,700. So he should have got a 2NL setting a February date. You're probably saying that he's got a 2NL showing a January date. He shouldn't have done. That's a mistake. And they should not issue the visa in January. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Cases are processing US Embassy in Qatar. Had to travel there in order to process my paperwork. Yep, okay. Do you think that KCC errors Yusuf is asking are indications for the VV movement from March? No. The errors are not outliers, I agree with you. But no, it's got nothing to do. They can't predict what they think the VB is going to do in the future. So if you're trying to use that as conjecture to say that case number AF56K will be current in March, you're dreaming. You'd be smoking the wacky backy there. That's not going to be the case. No, it's a mistake. A word nearly slipped out of my mouth, but it's a mistake. It's nothing else but a mistake, right? Doesn't indicate any clever or good intention on their part. Then how are possible KCC correct their mistakes? Because it's going to affect people who have got lowercase numbers with people. Yeah, I mean, it is. And you're right to point that out. It is going to affect people. It's a mistake, and it costs someone an opportunity of a 2NL. Someone who's qualified for the 2NL. Yeah, I'm not saying I know what the solution is going to be or when they're going to solve the problem. I'm pointing out the problem, right? I'm confirming what many of you already know, that there is a problem, and explaining what will happen to the cases in that scenario, right? Because they can't be issued. I mean, they should not technically be issued. And frankly, even setting up the interviews for them is bad because of what I mentioned earlier. It could cause them either a reduced validity period for the visa that they're then issued, because the visa validity is based on the medical date plus 6 months. So if you have your medical and it's a month early or 2 months early, that's time that will be reduced from your validity period. For the AF56K one, that's probably 3, 4, 5 months away. That means for certain that person would have to repeat their medical, which is going to be additional cost. That won't be free, right? So it's wrong. It's a bad thing. Case number is 69XX. You didn't tell me your region. Made my DS260 on June. I still got hope, right? I have no idea. Firstly, you didn't tell me your region. Secondly, I'm not predicting. Question about re-entry and absence from US. Okay. Okay. So re-entry. Well, ask your question, Scaramanga. Hello, Cherry. From Iraq, US Embassy is closed. Do you have any information about it? Well, Iraq Embassy is not going to reopen. There is a lawsuit for that embassy, but it's already filed. I don't know what's going to happen about that, but the Department of State should be offering alternative arrangements for that sort of embassy. Scaramanga, okay. Am I able to enter the USA, stay for like a month, leave and return again within 6 to 12 months, continue for a period of 1 to 2 years? Okay, first part of that, yes, when you arrive the first time you arrive with an immigrant visa, such as the DV lottery, you only have to stay in the country for 5 minutes, right? I'm being glib there. There's no minimum period of time that you have to stay in the country. You can leave the country. It doesn't matter that you haven't got your green card yet. You can leave straight away. You're entitled to do that. The moment you enter and have gone through that first process, you're a lawful permanent resident. Your visa is going to be stamped, endorsed, they call it, and that provides evidence that you're a lawful permanent resident, which you'll use until you get the plastic green card. But you're an LPR straight away, so you're allowed to leave. Then, in terms of entry and absence and re-entry, it is safest to leave in 6-month periods of time, because when you return to the US after being away for less than 6 months, technically you're not applying for re-entry, whereas the period of time between 6 and 12 months, technically you are applying for re-entry. It's okay. I've heard of a couple of isolated cases where people have been hassled because they've been away for 9 months, 10 months, 12, up to 12 months. They've been hassled by an overzealous immigration officer at the border, someone who's having a crappy day. He burnt his toast. His wife shouted at him, and so he goes into his work and he takes it out on people at work. And unfortunately, that happens, right? We're all humans. Now, there should be no question that somebody up to 12 months of absence can return to the USA. They can. There is a slight concern of an overzealous IO immigration officer saying, "Okay, I'm going to refer you to an immigration judge because I suspect that you're not following the rules, and I'm going to claim that you've abandoned your resident status." There is that concern. However, that concern also exists less than 6 months, because if you've done certain things, and I've got an article that goes into detail on this, but if you've done certain things, you can be thought to have abandoned your residence even less than 6 months, right? So be a little bit careful with that. Now, last part of your question, can you continue to do that for a period of 1 to 2 years? You can. I've seen people do it before by coming in and out. It's not ideal. The green card is it's a resident visa. It's not even a visa. It's a status. You're supposed to be living and working in the USA. But I've seen people get away with it without concern. I've also seen some people who've been, warned and threatened and treated badly by IOs because they've had these long absences for 2 or 3 periods of time, and the IO then has more reason to say, I think you're actually not following the rules, so I'm going to refer you to an immigration judge. Now, you go in front of an immigration judge and you have a good, reasonable explanation as to why you've been doing this, and you show that you are planning to move to the USA, you're going to be fine. And if you're concerned, or if you've got difficulties with that, you get an immigration lawyer, and any lawyer worth his salt could make sure you're okay in that case, right? If that happened. The one thing you should never do, if you're a lawful permanent resident and you are at the border, they say, "Okay, I'm not going to admit you into the USA." Firstly, that's not okay. That's not. They'll say things like that, but it's not true. It's not legal. They don't have the power to turn someone away. What they have the power to do is to say, "Okay, I'm going to admit you on kind of a probation. I'm going to admit you on probation and set a date for you to see the immigration judge." Some immigration officers, I've known of them say, "Okay, sign this piece of paper and I'll let you in as a tourist," meaning, give up your lawful permanent resident status. Don't sign that bloody piece of paper. That's a con, and you should not do that. You say, "No, let me in. I'll see an immigration judge. Thank you. I'll go and have my day in court. I don't need to be, ejected by you. Thank you very much. You've got rights." Right? So don't sign that piece of paper. Never, ever sign that piece of paper. Okay. Sydney left their old office before construction. The new office is even ready. Oh, my God. They left. Oh, never mind. It's stupid as hell. I'm going to get pissed off if I talk about that more. Sorry, Kate, but there you go. Case number, is it a high number? Don't ask me, is it a high number? Don't ask me to predict when you're going to receive your 2NL. Don't ask me to predict when your interview will be. If you want to know if your case is a high number, well, firstly, if you want to know if your case is a high number, you need to write it correctly, because there is no SA 27,000. I think you mean AS 27,000. But secondly, you can go on Zarthisius's site and you can see how many cases are in front of you and how many are behind you, how many people are in front of you and behind you. And then by engaging your brain and using a little common sense, you can figure out whether you're a high case number or not. A high case number is relative to the cases overall. It's like, where are you in the line? That's what it means. That's why we refer to high and low case numbers. So once you know how many people are in front of you and behind of you, you know where you are in the line. Okay? And that's, that information is out there for you. Can you get a 2NL the same month that you're current? No, Moroccan, blah, blah, blah. So they have in the past sent out 2NLs with very, very short notice. Like, normally just after lawsuits have been successful or significant changes have been made, like, for example, the December 9th revocation of the document procedure. Just after that, they sent a bunch of 2NLs, and some of those were pretty short notice, right? So even within the same month, it could happen. But that's rare. You're supposed to have a few weeks to prepare. You need a little bit of time to book the medical, to get your paperwork together, etc. So it can happen, but it's not the way it's supposed to happen. And the more normalized the processing gets, the less likely that is going to be. Okay. Ching, 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 ching. Do you think they will sabotage DV 2022 and move cases to current within the next few months? Those two parts of the sentence don't really make sense together. The sabotage that they did before was in not making cases documentarily qualified. That's going to be very difficult for them to do when the applicant can't be held to blame for slowing down the process. So what do I mean by that? Before they removed the document procedure, there was a task that you were responsible for that they could say you'd screwed up, which was sending in the documents. Now, you might have genuinely made a mistake with the documents. You might have put the wrong email address. You could have put the wrong documents in there. You could have had documents which weren't clear. There's a number of things you could have done, right? But it was on you. You made the mistake, and therefore you didn't become documentarily qualified. They had a plausible deniability about how cases were not becoming documentarily qualified. The status of being documentarily qualified still exists. Even though they've removed the document procedure, the documentarily qualified word doesn't refer to the document procedure. It refers to whatever document they decide is necessary for you to be ready for the interview, right? And at the moment, what they've said is you need to provide the DS-260. They've said that it doesn't need processing, but actually does. There is a certain amount of processing. But the point is that submitting the DS-260 is all you need to do, right? You don't need to provide any documents. So now they can't claim that the applicants, you, have done something wrong, and therefore that's why you didn't become documentarily qualified. Okay, you understand all that. Now you understand that, then you consider how the visa bulletin works and whether they go current or not with a region. And basically, the amount of documentarily qualified cases that they know about informs the decision about how many cases they should be revealing for the next VB and whether or not they can make a region current or not. And because they've made it easier to become DQ, because they've removed the document procedure, there are thousands of cases that could be documentarily qualified overnight, right? And so they've taken away their own excuse, if you see what I mean. And therefore, it's less likely that we'll see regions going current. So it wouldn't be an act of sabotage now. It was sabotage before. They could sabotage the cases before when they had the document procedure, but they have no way of sabotaging the number of people that become DQ right now. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Do I have any information about Ghana concerning interviews? No. Same question from the same person. Is it a high number? Still not going to answer it. Is there a public speaker on behalf of KCC to explain why they're working to clear the fog for everyone? No, of course. There's been no public speaker. I've spoken to some of the staff members there before. I've spoken to managers and supervisors there. But there's no proactive attempt on their part, unfortunately, to communicate things like how they're working and whether they're meeting their deadlines and targets and that sort of thing. No, they haven't felt the need to do that. Should they do that? Yeah, they absolutely should, but they haven't. So no. Already answered that one. SSP. My documents received 23rd of November. Nobody cares about your documents anymore. You're trying to get me to do a prediction, whether it'll be a March yes or no, 80%, yes or whatever. No, still no predictions. Marco Pale, I'm the guy who got the case number of 69XX. I'm from Europe, Italy. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay, because you asked earlier. Okay, so at least now I know you're EU 69XX. Okay. Is a problem about visa dropout university? Hmm? Is there a problem about dropout of university to disqualify a visa if the person has a high school certificate? I'm pretty sure you already asked this question. I already answered it. No, there's no real problem. Having a bachelor's degree is not the requirement. Having the requirement on education is that you've reached the level at which you can enter a university in order to take a bachelor's degree. Okay, it's the point at which you enter the university. That's based on the American system of education, where that point is called high school graduation, and it's normally at about 18 years old. In the UK, where I'm from, for example, it would mean in the old days, you'd go through what was called O levels and A levels, and then you could go to university. So we actually called that period of time to get A levels, for example, that was college, and you're between 16 and 18 years old during the time that you're getting your A levels, 2-year course, and you needed to complete those A levels in order to enter university. That meant that under the UK system, for example, you had to have got the A levels to be qualified for the lottery, because you have to have met the requirements to be able to enter the university. Okay. But yeah, it doesn't matter otherwise. Is this case number a high number? Everybody, what does Simon not do? Okay, this is a question that comes up. So this is, can you expect the 2NL without RFS? It remains to be seen whether they're going to send out ready for scheduling emails proactively or not, or whether they'll only send them out to people that ask their status. It also remains to be seen whether the cases that previously were requested to send in documents are automatically RFS, and therefore, don't get another email. Because many people got to the point where the DS260 was processed, and at the end of processing, they in the old system they sent out the document request email, right? Please send your documents, but here's the documents you need to send. That shows that your DS260 was processed, which is the only thing you need to have done now to become DQ. So logically, if you receive the document request email, then you are ready for scheduling. But you may. It doesn't matter whether you get the RFS email or not, frankly. But if you desperately want to see it because you just can't control yourself, then you can email KCC, and they are being pretty responsive, and they'll probably send a reply saying, yeah, you're ready for scheduling. Okay. Do reception of 2NL depends on the embassy acceptance of cases for DV interview? What if the embassy doesn't accept DV cases for now? I addressed this earlier. The embassies make available X number of appointment slots. They say what they can do, right? They don't look at individual cases and say, I'm accepting that one, but not that one. They just say, here's, we can handle 20 slots, 20 interviews this month, or 100, or 400, or whatever it might be, whatever number, and KCC just set up the interviews. So that's how it works. Some embassies won't even make any available, right? And so the embassy is controlling that process to an extent by making interview slots available. Thank you for paying attention there. I did mention I'm not going to make predictions. Thank you. May I get 2-0 this month or whatever? I don't know. Not making predictions. Why is there not communication between DOS, KCC, and the embassy? Of course there's communication. Why are you saying there isn't? Case about 900 AS, already DQ. You're asking why is there no communication about your case? Well, I don't know. I don't know why. Well, actually, you're from Nepal. Nepal is closed right now. Nepal Embassy is not taking interviews right now. That's why you're not hearing. So, Red One, yeah, you're right. I'm not the oracle. It's the reason I'm not predicting is not because I can't do math. I can do math pretty well. I've been studying the SEAC data for years. I've had the SEAC data available to me since 2014. So I've been able to make mathematical predictions since then. And many of you can do the same thing. But math is not the problem right now, right? It doesn't matter how many people mathematically can go through Nepal Embassy if Nepal Embassy don't open up. You understand? It doesn't matter how many, and it's not, and it's not necessarily COVID. It doesn't matter how many people should be processed in Australia if Sydney Embassy shut their doors and don't open up because they're taking a tea break, right? It's not about, there's too many of these other factors for us to make predictions. That's why I don't predict, not because I don't know the math. And also, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what the Omicron variant is going to do. I don't know what's going to happen with the next variant, right? Until bloody idiots start taking their vaccinations so that we can switch this thing off. And man, some of you piss me off with your attitudes about vaccinations. Jesus. But until people are doing what they need to do in order for us to all go back and live our lives normally, which is take the bloody vaccination and wear a mask and do it and, practice a little bit of social distancing. Until then, we're going to be living in this bloody nightmare, right? So, don't tell me you want a DV visa and tell me in the next breath you're not going to, oh, no, I don't think vaccinations work, like some idiot told me today. Oh, morons. Hang on, Paris Embassy, I'll skip past that. It seemed like Paris Embassy don't move fast. Yeah, it seems like that at the moment. We'll have to wait another month, I think, to see what they're doing, right? So, yeah, we'll wait another month, and then we'll sue the bastards. Latest, we are SA 2600, getting the interview in San Jose, Costa Rica. How nice, Costa Rica. The embassy only has 15 to 20 cases per year. Is it a good thing or not? Okay, so there is a slightly good thing with embassies like that. There are some embassies that do very little cases, and it should be quite easy for them to step up. So I was bitching about Sydney Embassy. Sydney only interview on Tuesday mornings, right? DV cases. They only do DV cases on Tuesday mornings. They make that time slot available to KCC, and KCC's fill it up. And they only do a couple of hundred interviews a year, right? So spread over the year, that's like they're doing half a dozen interviews on a Tuesday morning, and it's lovely. But if they were under pressure and if they felt the need to actually respond and do something good for people, they could do their 150, 200 interviews in a week. If they wanted to, they could do that. They could do it in, maybe not a week, maybe a month, right? They could get off their asses and do more than just Tuesday mornings if they wanted to. And so for an embassy like Costa Rica, if you've only got a very small number of cases, yeah, it has some advantage to be at a small embassy like that. Bern Embassy, for example, last year did some stuff for a number of 2021 selectees that was really good. They went beyond the normal course of action to really help a few people through. They really proactively reached out to people over a weekend. They scheduled people with a couple of days' notice. They really, did some good stuff. Even a couple of cases which were not DQ, they squeezed in and they got those cases done. So a small embassy that does very little DV work can be effective if they've got the right attitude. It's all down to their attitude, right? Cuban Peter. KCC began to process cases by DS260 send date. No, they did not. So they process by send date, yes, submit date. But not all DS260s take the same time to process, right? So please understand, the time that is important is when the DS260 is processed, right? When it has been processed. Yes, they started at the same time, but that doesn't mean they all end at the same time. So, for example, and if you want proof of this, just look at some of the data. There's lots of data out there. Everybody that submitted their DS260s on May 10th, for example, were not all processed, right? At the same time. Some people on that day were, some people weren't, because they take different times. So the sending date, as you're calling it, the submission date, it is important, but it's not the whole story, right? Then you go on to say, yeah, it's about the low SCN. If you look at the way the data develops, let me just move this across for a second. I'll just show you here with a million different windows. Well, here we go. So if you look at this data, this is an example of data. What I want you to watch. Oh, hang on. Let me just make this. Okay, this is 2021 data, but I could do this for any year. And the green and sort of red area there, that's what I want you to watch. As I move the time slider, you'll see that there's a lot of growth and change in the early case numbers. And you can see that in any region. This is a year where every case was current. So yeah, absolutely. There will be more development, more activity in the lower case number ranges, because that's how the process is supposed to work. And that's how the process does work. We were having this argument for months before the document procedure was taken away. But I've been demonstrating for a long time. You could do the same thing with any of these. So 2019, if we just sort of do that, can you see that the growth is happening at the beginning of the year, and then later in a normal year, it starts to fill out as we go through the year. But there's still growth happening in the early ranges every month. That's how it's supposed to happen. So there you go. Hopefully that's helping a little bit. Yasuo says, do you think cases will move to current this year? They shouldn't. There's too many people selected. Everybody now is very easily DQ. They can DQ cases much faster than they can interview them. So we could get all the cases DQ'd in just 2 or 3 months. They could easily do that. So should we be current? No, we shouldn't be current. Will we be? I don't know. Bella 9095. Right, DV 2020 and DV 2021. Since you're asking this, haven't addressed this for a little while. The appeals are in process for DV 20 and 2021. When they appealed, it was widely assumed that they had permission to appeal. The government had sought permission from their bosses to appeal, and it seems like they didn't. They simply appealed in order to keep the possibility of appeal open, right? Now, they may be given permission to appeal, or they may not. If they're not given permission to appeal, continue the appeal, which means spending more time of their time, wasting valuable resources, money, frankly. They may not be given permission, in which case they'll withdraw the appeals, okay? Or the appeals will be allowed to continue, and they'll take months, right? And that's the same for DV 2020 or 2021. All the cases have been appealed. However, the other thing that's going on right now is that the government made a declaration that said that they had to modify a number of systems, about 5 systems. And they provided the names, and I actually went through the list of names of the systems that they said they need to modify. And it does make sense. It sort of makes sense why each of those systems would be connected to the process of issuing visas after the end of the year. I'm not entirely convinced about a couple of them, but let's just assume that they're right. So they've got to make some changes to their systems, some programming changes. They said that would take them about 4 months. They said it would finish by about April. So nothing will happen until April, okay? So don't expect any movement on DV 2020 or DV 2021 until about April at the earliest, right? And that's regardless of what happens on the appeal front, okay? Yep, someone else here is. Don't ask me if it's high. Okay, well let me try and sort of take you through the thinking process. So you're telling me your case number is 12,600 under EU. You checked and it says 9K is in front of you and 10K is behind you. If you were standing in a line of people waiting for, bread, and there were 19 people in that line, and there were 20 people in that line, 9 were in front of you and 10 were behind you, would you ask me whether you had, where am I? Would you say, am I in a high position in the line or a low position in the line? Of course you wouldn't. You would look at the 9 people in front of you and the 10 people after you and say, oh, I'm roughly halfway. Right? That's all that's what you need to do here. You don't need to ask me when you already know how many people are in front of you, how many people are behind you. You've already got that information. All right. Now, if you're asking me to do the math to say how many people will be given visas in front of you before you get your visa, and compare that to the quotas and to see what risk you're at, that's part of what I'm not doing at the moment. I'm not doing that sort of prediction because there are too many factors. Embassies could be closed. Individual embassies, maybe somebody else's embassy is closed but not yours, so you'll go faster. Right? Or maybe your embassy gets closed either now or tomorrow, in which case, if it closes tomorrow, you're screwed, right? So, I'm not going to predict because there's too many other things going on. I've just listed a couple of examples. I don't know anything about Abu Dhabi handling cases. You can check that on Zarthisius's site. Let me just do that. Actually, for 2022. Okay, this site here is where you check to see how many people are in front. Oh, this is a little bug that's happening on his page. I don't know why that's happening. But let me just drag this across. Okay, so that's the page. There's the data, and I'll put it in the chat here. That's the link. Go to that place and scroll down in here, put in your number, and check it. It tells you how many people are in front of you and how many are behind you. Okay. So yeah, let me just do a 2022. Let me do this one. If you do this is a real case. I know this one. So there are 29,232 cases before you and 453 after you. So this guy knows then that he's a high case number, right? He's almost at the end because only 450 cases are after him. And then it's put into numbers because, of course, the cases, each case contains the main selectee and any derivative. So it's on average about 2 people per case, roughly. Depends on the region. So Zarthis is doing a calculation, 48,000. Now, the math that you want me to do, let me just I'll tell you how I would do that, right? So I would say, okay, there's 48,000 people in front of me in a normal year where all this COVID crap wasn't going on, where all these embassies weren't getting closed because they're going for tea breaks or moving location or, having their countries invaded or whatever it might be. In a normal year where none of that crap was happening, you would look at that number of 48,000 people and you'd say, okay, roughly 35% of those people won't apply, right? So roughly a third of that. So we're down to 32,000 people. There's 10% of those will be denied at interview. And that's this year because they're not doing the documents procedure. And let's call it 15% will be denied. So that means that from the 48,000 people, there should be something like 28 or 29,000 people who could pass the interview if they were given a chance to do so. And they're all in front of you. And so they should go before you, right? The quota for Africa is 23,500. So 23,500 visas, and there's 28,000 people in front of you, let's say, you're at risk, right? But out of those 28,000 people, right now, some number of people in that, and I don't know the numbers because I can't predict what's about to happen, are going to find that their embassies are going to close because of the COVID virus, or their countries are going to get invaded, or a number of other ridiculous things that shouldn't be there, but they are this year. And those things are the things that I can't predict. That's why I'm not doing the math, right? Now, it's a bit glib. That's not how it works everywhere, but that is at least a bit of an understanding of how you could do the math if you thought the math would actually give you a chance of figuring out whether you're going to get a visa or not, but it won't. Can a Canadian citizen apply for AOS since we have the privilege to enter the States without a visa? Okay, you can only adjust status from a valid status. So, for example, you can't adjust status from an ESTA, right? You know what an ESTA is. You know, if you're in Europe, for example, you're one of those countries where you have an ESTA. An ESTA is part of the visa waiver program. If you enter the USA on an ESTA, it means you don't have a visa. If you don't have a visa, you've got nothing to adjust status from. So no, you can't do that with an ESTA. Canada, I'm not quite sure the technical details about what you mean with, you know, you don't need a visa, but if you don't have a visa, you have no status to adjust from. You couldn't do that. Okay. Okay. The reason I'm coming back to your question, Scaramanga, is because you're saying that you're going to do uni studies at home. Just understand that America has universities here too. And whilst you might be at some university abroad that's highly respected, it's not an American university. And Americans are small-minded. And so when an American employer is sitting there and he says the university, and he sees that you attended the University of some unknown place that he's never heard of, because Americans don't understand geography very well, he's not going to be as impressed with your case as he would be when he reads someone went to the University of Florida. He knows where Florida is. He knows the standards that would be applied there. And of course, it's the University of Florida, so everyone's having a party. So he knows it's not great. It probably isn't as good as your university in, well, certainly not in Switzerland or in Nairobi or wherever. It's probably not as good an education, but he knows that. He knows the University of Florida. So if your justification for doing that 2 years staying out is to be at some university in some foreign country, you probably need to rethink your plans and figure out that once you've entered the USA, you can get all sorts of ways of going to university here relatively inexpensively. And the university degree you end up with here will be more relevant, more respected, more understood. And so, to be honest with you, I think you should rethink your plan. Okay, think a little bit. You know, is it sensible to keep going to the University of Nairobi? It might be wherever the hell you're going. I don't know where you're going. It might be a great university, but unless it's world famous, I mean, different things. Sorry to be British here for a minute, but if you list Oxford University or Cambridge University on your resume in America, Americans have heard of those universities, but have they heard of they've heard of Madrid, but they don't really, they're not really impressed. Do they know what's the famous university in Spain? I can't remember now, but there are lots of very highly rated universities outside of America, but Americans won't know them, so they'll only be impressed with the ones that they've heard of. Okay. I answered this question. When do I expect to go current? You're at the Swedish embassy. That's okay. So there you go. So are you attending? So Scaramanga, you may be attending embassy in Sweden, probably an excellent university, but again, will they understand that? A typical American employee, probably not. I mean, you're going to say the name of your university in Sweden, and nobody's going to understand it, right? SP, those who accept documents qualify for KCC before 9th of December are priority. No, there isn't a priority given to the people that were previously documentarily qualified, other than the fact that they were documentarily qualified before you, right? The date of DQ is important in these matters once all cases are, or once a number of cases are current, right? If there are 2 cases in front of them and there's 1 slot left at the embassy, right, in a given month, there's 2 cases that could fill that slot. What they're supposed to do is they say, okay, we'll take this one because the number is higher, yes, but the DQ date is lower, earlier. They got DQ'd first, right? So this one could have a EU 13,000. This one could be EU 1,000, but this one got documentarily qualified first, and so therefore should be given that final slot. And the next one, the next case, the EU 1,000, would be put into the following month. That's how it's supposed to work. Okay. Burma. Wow. Is it okay to call it Burma still? I thought, you know, the whole Myanmar thing, but I'm constantly being told off by my colleagues at work for, and you know, I should probably not do this, but I refer to one of my favorite potato dishes in Indian cooking as being Bombay aloo, and they're insulted. My colleagues are insulted by me referring to Bombay. I'm like, you know, when anybody tells me they're insulted, like people have been wound up by me recently about religion. If you tell me you don't want me to insult your God, I'm going to deliberately insult your God. That's how I work, right? I'm that sort of guy. I'm going to provoke you because you need to be provoked because your religion's silly. And if you're going to get upset because I'm going to call a place Bombay because of history 100 years ago, I'm sorry, that's also silly. History is important. We've got to recognize history, etc. And the British in particular did a lot of bad things, but that was before. We've done a lot of good things, you know, as well. So, you know, but yeah, my colleagues and I have some interesting chats about the Kohinoor diamond. And it's just, you know, it's just a good way to wind everyone up. Yep. Good. What's a hole? A hole is a case that's disqualified before the announcements of the results. Okay, so before May results were, you know, the results were announced even before then in May. Some cases were disqualified as part of the selection process. Those cases are holes. Okay. Yeah, I'm sad we won't hear send the bloody documents anymore. But it might come back next year. We'll see, because the not sending documents is a pilot program only for DV 2022 at the moment. So we'll see whether that comes back. I hope it doesn't come back because it was a bloody nightmare. Can the address you quote in the US be a hotel address rather than the friend's address? No, don't do that. If the green card is sent to a hotel, because that's the address you gave, and the hotel, you know, it gets lost or whatever, because a green card is valuable, right? It's a very useful piece of photo ID. Some people in the black market would pay money for that, right? So if that green card gets lost, or if it just gets thrown in the trash, you'll have to pay $550, I think it is, for the replacement, and it will be your problem because they sent it to the address that you gave them. So it can't be a PO box. It should not be a hotel address. It should be some address where you can trust someone to hold on to your card. To be honest, I would love to be able to provide my address, but I you know, so I could, you know, have people send me their green cards and I could then forward them on. I've thought about doing that as a service before, and having my daughter sort of do it, and maybe she'd do it for pocket money or whatever. But to be honest, you know, I don't really want to publicize my my home address around the world. Thank you very much. So I piss off too many people about religion. So there you go. How is it possibly? Well, we've already talked about that, so I don't need to do that again. OC 1600, single applicant, already been DQ'd. Just wondering if it would be too late to reopen the DS260 and submit and resubmit after getting married. For God's sake, do that sooner rather than later. Get married as soon as you can. Include your future spouse. You definitely want to reopen your DS260 and add your spouse on there. So if you're not already married, go and get married and get her on there. Okay, or him, or you know, whoever you married. Do it sooner rather than later. Okay, last couple of questions then. Let's see. Okay. I selected a university degree during the entry. I might have finished the university in December. How will I fill my DS260 if I won the DV 2023? Oh, you haven't even won. Okay, so firstly, you're wasting my time because you you haven't even won yet. Your chance of selection is once in 100 years, roughly, right? So frankly, I'm already wasting my time talking to you, but it's an interesting point. So, so I'll answer it. You lied about your university level. You didn't have that. You should learn to not tell lies in an immigration process. However, luckily for you, the information that you lied about is innocuous. It doesn't make any difference. It's simply for statistical data. There is no advantage to people who put in university degree. It didn't increase your chances of being selected or anything. So luckily for you, it doesn't matter. But in the future, tell the bloody truth. Okay, that will be my new hashtag. Tell the bloody truth. For Simon's bread analogy, here we go. You also need to know how much the bread shop still has and how many people in the queue will decide not to get it and how many will be rejected. Thank you. Thank you for understanding the analogy and making it even better. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Okay. Slow pace of interviews, possible reasons, but why skip hundreds of case numbers and pick up one case and send them to an L? Oh, okay. So I get this all the time as well. People with like case number EU 7000 seem very offended when they see someone with, let's say, EU 9000 being scheduled before them, right? But what did you expect? Did you expect that? So that probably meant that the person with the EU 9000 submitted their DS260 and probably got it processed before you. Did you expect the whole of EU to just wait until you got off your ass and submitted your DS260? Do you think that's how it works? Of course it doesn't work that way. It works on the basis of, okay, who is documentarily qualified? When did they become documentarily qualified? And if all these cases are current, then the person who became DQ first will get interviewed first. It's not, and it also doesn't mean that when you see, by the way, that a case number EU 9000 has been scheduled for interview, that you should expect that every case under EU 9000 has been scheduled. That's not the case either. They'll be filling in cases under the already current numbers for months. They'll be doing, EU is current up to 13,000, Africa is current up to 20,000. You'll see cases less than AF 20,000 getting interviews for months from now, right? They fill in. So that's the way it works. It goes in case number order, but not in complete disregard of your laziness. That's basically it. I'm sure there are hundreds of single people with no travel history or military service in the skipper span. What the skipper span? I don't know what that is. I can't really get this kind of random selection for 2NL. I don't know what the skipper span is. I can't even. Normally, I can figure out what people are talking about, but I don't know what you mean there. But I suppose what you're saying is that there's lots of faster processed DS260s. With simple cases, and they're ready for DQ. Yeah, that's true, but it's on an embassy by embassy basis, right? So, one embassy might have lots of space, the next embassy might have very little space, so in some embassies there will be more waiting time than in others, potentially, if there's a lot more people, for that embassy. It just works that way. I mean, you can kind of understand it if you think about it, but people tend to stay at very high level for some reason. They don't think about how the process would actually work. I don't know why. This is a good question. Thank you for asking it. Does all of this slow processing also affect AOS cases? If so, can you explain how, please? Already got my 2NL. You already got your 2NL for AOS. No, you didn't. There is no 2NL for AOS. I'd love to know what you mean there, because you might have screwed things up. AOS is a different process, totally different. The only thing that it gets from the rest of the process is the VB movement, right? And so you can't file your I-485 packet until your case is current. And actually, you don't have to wait until, let's say right now, for example, EU 13,000 is current for February interviews, but it was announced in the last VB. The moment it was announced, if you were case number 12,999, you could submit your I-485 packet right there, and that's the early filing policy. You don't have to wait until February to submit it. But you can't submit your I-485 if your case number is not current at all, if it's not in the visa bulletin. And that visa bulletin speed is affected largely by consular processing cases, which make up about 95% of DV cases, roughly. There's about 5% of cases go through AOS. Now, your comment about you got your 2NL. The only thing that we consider the 2NL for AOS cases is the receipt. When you pay the $330, you get a receipt from KCC. That's the nearest you get to a 2NL. So I don't know what you mean by a 2NL, and I'm hoping what you don't mean is a 2NL related to your DS260, because that's not how the AOS process works, and you may have screwed things up. And by the way, if you're doing adjustment of status, the DS260 filing is totally optional. I recommend filing it, but I don't recommend filing it too early. So if you have filed your DS260, then that was probably a mistake. You should wait until you're filing your I-485 and do it about then, or just in front of that time. Okay. Please respond to my husband. He is crazy and waiting for you to see his comment. I would do, but I don't know your husband's name, Creela. Well, please respond to my husband. Who's your husband? What am I supposed to do? It's someone else called La. Is it? I don't know. How would I know? Oh dear. Someone needs to write in there now. Cree, your husband needs to write. I'm, Cree. Cree's husband or whatever. Talking about cases from one country around. I don't know what. I didn't catch the rest of that question. Oh, okay. You're talking about that question. Yeah. You're talking from one country, Iran. Well, Iran's not easy either, because the Iranian selectees, number one, the background checking on Iranian selectees, both before and after the interviews, is more extensive than other countries, because Iran government hates America. So that represents a bit of a risk factor. And they also don't cooperate with America. So whereas, for example, if you're a German or if you're a French person and you submit your documents, America has some ability to tap into their systems to figure out things like marriages and births and that sort of thing. Iran doesn't make any of those systems available to America because they don't like America. And so it makes life more difficult for Iranian selectees. Then the other thing is that Iranian selectees go to one of three embassies, one of which has been saying recently they don't want to interview anyone else from outside their country. So there's challenges, right? It's difficult. But mainly, American males have a more difficult time to get processed. So you might think it's a simple case, but if it's Iranian, it's not a simple case. Just traveling through the Middle East and some of the countries is enough to kick off alarm bells. Or your name, could be enough to trigger off alarm bells. There's all sorts of tests applied. Okay. I'm intrigued by Cree's question now, so I'm searching for a husband. Just help me out here. I don't know what that is. Ethiopian case. Sent the document November 12. My country is not good. What's your advice? Wait, take up yoga. TV 2021, got my visa in September, moved to NY last month. Awesome. Good luck. Enjoy New York. New York, I can understand people living there. If you said you moved to Alabama or something, I couldn't understand it. How come that? I talked about that right at the beginning. Working as a software engineer for 15 years, but didn't finish high school degree. I've already, with working experience, if you can't qualify in education, but you can qualify with good working experience, you've just got to be very careful about how you present your case. You've got to make sure you show your career progression. You show the income that you've earned. You've shown work product. You show your resume and LinkedIn or whatever it is that sort of shows how your career developed. Okay, and as long as you put a little bit of effort in a nice organized format, the people that have done that have been approved. The people that I've seen rejected on work experience, either they don't have the right sort of profession, or they didn't put any effort into explaining what they did. Is America a big country with great job opportunities to study, or is it difficult to integrate? References are needed to find a job. Has America become like Europe? Please respond. Has America become like Europe? Europe tries to be like America, let's face it. Not the other way around. And most Americans are horrified by the idea of being like Europe, frankly. Well, it's a really broad question. It is a big country. There are a lot of good job opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities in general. You can have a great life here. You can earn a lot of money here. You can become an entrepreneur. You can, if you build some product, whatever that is, the market here is much more lucrative than other markets in other parts of the world, even at the same numbers in terms of population. So there's lots of opportunity here for all sorts of things, right? Smart people do well here if they work hard. You need references to find a job, and you'll probably go backwards. Let's say you're in some sort of middle management or upper management job and you come to America. Your credibility, your history, possibly your education won't be as highly valued here as it would have been in your own home country. So I tell people, particularly in some professions, you're likely to go backwards in terms of your career for a short time in America. You need to be aware of that. So if you're a director at your company and you come here, you may not be able to find a job, at the same level. You might become a lower level manager, not a director. You've got to accept that that's what is going to happen. Once you've got a job here and you've built up a little bit of a track record for even a few months or a couple of years, then you can go on to greater things. And it's much easier to find a job when you've got a job. It's just the way life is. 2NL, they acknowledged, so it's not the 2NL. It's not. They just acknowledge that you're doing AOS. Because you sent them the DS260. As I say, I hope you're close to being current, because you wouldn't normally send the DS260 until you're close to being current on AOS, right? I am. I guess that means you are the husband of Kreelar, right? So there you go. You've seen that, but I still don't know what your question was. Bruce Nako, thank you, Simon. You and I are on the same wavelength. You see, you're probably retype the question so it's easier to see. So I'm going to try and find that one. It's 2:00 at night here for you. Okay, I see. You're both tired, but watching. Give us hope. Okay. So retype your question. I'll wait for that question and then I'll call it a day. I'll just answer some other questions in the meantime. But if you've got a question, please feel free to ask it. Obviously, living conditions in the state would differ amongst individuals according to their preferences and where they can get employment. However, I'm interested in what your top 6 states would be. Somebody asked me this the other day. I'm biased. I've lived in Florida and I've lived in California. Florida was great, but I kind of hated the state. It's flat, it's boring, it's all modern, it's a swampland, kind of plastic. Didn't really like that. You go to the northeast states. By the way, and in Florida, anywhere in the south where there's sunshine, there's people are smarter in the north, because if the weather's crappy and you're stuck inside a house during the winter, you might read a book and therefore you might actually get better education or better intelligence because you're in one of those states. So I tend to find that the smartest people tend to be in the Northeast, around New York, New Jersey. There's a bustling economy up there. States like Pennsylvania, etc. Cities like Chicago, like New York, Connecticut. They're all good places, right? There's lots of opportunity, but they're densely packed, and the cities are kind of I don't love the cities. California is great, but very expensive. Good for technology jobs where I live. I live on the edge of Silicon Valley, just outside San Francisco. Great for technology work. If you like, a more of a laid back thing, if you want some more sun, you can be in LA, you can be in San Diego, lovely places too. There are lots of other places. Texas has got some nice places. I'm just trying to think in the middle states there. More or less, you could ignore most of the middle states. Why would you go to Wyoming? Why would you go to North Dakota? Why would you bother? There are some states you just wouldn't bother with going there, right? It's so bad that I was in conversation with a gentleman who ran a church in, I think, somewhere just outside Fargo, North Dakota, the back of bloody beyond. And this guy was offering people assistance in moving to America to come and live in his town, and he would help them with driving them to job appointments and everything else. And he was very excited about the place where he lives, but it's a bloody awful place to live. Terrible economy, terrible weather. Take someone from Africa and put them in a part of America that sees several feet of snow every winter. What the hell are you thinking? That's not. Why would you do that? If I want to see snow, I'll drive to see snow. I'll play in the snow, and then I'll drive home, or I'll drive to a nice warm hotel. I don't want to bloody well live in snow. I came from the UK. Why would I want to live in snow? So there you go. So that's that. Right. So let's see if I can find this question then. Oh, you're killing me, you two. Cree and Bruce or whatever. If you were to turn back time, where would you choose USA again as an ideal place to live for you? What did you study for? Okay. I've had a sort of a 25-year relationship with the USA. I came here in the mid-90s. I've earned more money in the USA than I've ever earned outside the USA, let's say. My opportunities, my wealth is built in the USA. I did the same work in other parts of the world. I worked in Switzerland, I worked in the UK, I worked in other places in Europe briefly, but mainly UK and Switzerland. I was in a sort of very well-paid profession that I could go pretty much anywhere else. And I could have a nice life in the UK where I come from. But the weather was crappy. And to really get ahead in the UK is harder there. If I'm going to win, you're going to have to lose. That's how it works in the UK. In the UK, I can win and you can win too. We can both win. There's enough for everybody. If I want to go and buy a house with 20 acres of land, I can do that, right? Maybe not in this area because it would be too expensive, but there are places that you can have 200 acres or whatever amount of land you want in America. You can live in fabulous cities. You can be skiing in the afternoon and on the beach in the morning, right? The geography here is conducive to that. If you don't want to wash your car, you can get someone to wash your car. If you don't want to park your car, you can get someone to park your car. If you don't want to stand in line, you can get someone to stand in line for you in America, right? There's service industries here. There's an excitement and a vibe. For me, I'm in technology. There's an excitement and a vibe of being in Silicon Valley. So whilst I could have had a good life elsewhere, my Spanish wife, who likes to see blue skies and sunshine, was not happy in the UK where we tried to live. And, California is more conducive to keeping her happy. And it's all about that. Welcome, Sahar. Thank you for that. And good job to you as well. Thank you for another YouTuber. I hope you're a good one, Sahar. I don't I can't speak Arabic. I'm sorry to say, so I don't understand everything you say on your videos, but I'm assuming that you give people good information, and I know you've interviewed Curtis, etc. So I'm sure you're doing a good job. Okay, last question then. Bruce has finally asked his question. Oh, Charlie's just responding there. So I'll come back to you, Bruce, in a minute. We're thinking of Northeast, so it's great that you mentioned that area. Both avid learners and love extending our knowledge. Yeah, so Northeast is good. Oh, the rocket engineer and pilot couple that you spoke to a couple of months back. Yep. Yeah, it'd be a good place. Just be careful. The weather's not so good there. That's the only thing. Okay, so Bruce, I work for a large company that deals with military defense, and I have certification to work with American products. My wife and I were wondering whether it would be useful in the process. EU 5000. Not useful in the process. No, it doesn't give you any advantage. Let's say you've got, you may have some sort of limited clearance because of your military defense background. It doesn't help you in the immigration process through DV lottery, because nothing about DV lottery is dependent on your job. Now, it might help you with where you go, right? Where you go in the States. It might give you more opportunities to work, etc., but nothing with the immigration process itself. Okay. Also, if you've worked with weaponry, it can cause you a problem, right? They're a little bit suspicious of people who, list on their skill sets, nuclear rocket scientist. That can slow up your DS-260 processing. They'll go, bloody hell, this guy could blow us all to smithereens. So, they're going to look into your background a little bit more carefully. So it can work against you. But no, it'll be useful for when you move here, but not useful for the immigration process. Okay. Yeah, I think I've probably covered most of the questions here. Hope to hear my opinion. So I see. This is the opinion. Let me just answer this question for you, Saha. Question: based on the number we saw tonight, I think the feasibility is going to be current sooner on DV 2022. No, I don't agree. You probably weren't online earlier, so let me just repeat this, Saha, if I can. And it would be good if you would consider the comments and perhaps spread that information on your YouTube channel, right? What makes a region go current or not is how many visas are available, the embassy capacity to process those visas, and how many people are qualified for interviews, in those regions. Okay. Now, for the third thing, how many people are qualified, that just got much easier on December 9th when they took away the document procedure. So in previous years, the last couple of years, in DV 2020 and DV 2021, and even DV 2019, the VB moved too fast and got to current because few people were able to become documentarily qualified because KCC was screwing everyone up, right? And so where only a few people become documentarily qualified, the number of visas available is large, the capacity is large potentially, but the number of people who are documentarily qualified is small. And so the visa office looked at those three statistics: a lot of capacity, a lot of visas available, and a small amount of people who are qualified for the interview. They looked at that and they said, we can make everyone current then. We can make all the regions current because there's only a few people who are coming through. It seems like people are not sending in their documents. They're not interested in the DV lottery. That's what they assumed. Obviously wrong. It was bad because KCC were actually limiting the number of cases becoming documentarily qualified. Now, though, the number of people that become documentarily qualified is going to be huge because the only requirement from the selectee's point of view is to submit the DS-260 that most people did months ago, right? So now the capacity is a little bit lower potentially. The number of visas is high. We're running out of time. That's probably another element I should introduce there. We're running out of time, and the amount of people who can become documentarily qualified is now big. It's a lot, right? it's going to be 2/3 of 119,000 people, roughly 80,000 people, can become documentarily qualified in a very short period of time, in 2 or 3 months. And so it's absolutely the reverse of what we would need to see in order to make regions current. And so, no, I wouldn't read any intelligence into the way the VB moves, etc., or even the 2NLs. If the visa office do pay attention, and if KCC process as many DS-260s as they should, it becomes less and less likely that the regions will go current. That's basically what it means. Now, that could obviously be affected by large chunks of people in this big section not being able to interview. So, Afghanistan closes. It's very difficult for people in Afghanistan to process. All of a sudden, that makes it easier for other people in Asia. Kathmandu embassy stays closed. That's 3,600 visas that, aren't being issued because Kathmandu stayed closed, right? Iranians can't be processed, So there are factors that will come into the equation that could make it possible for a region to go current, even though there's many more people than the process should be able to handle. But it will only be because of those other factors, and that, frankly, is a sad thing. I mean, it would be a sad thing if the government don't come up with a good plan to process, visas in Nepal, for example, or Iran, or Afghanistan, or Yemen, or any of these affected countries. And I'm only talking about Asia. I could go on about Europe and Africa and OC with Sydney. Same thing. There are unfair situations developing all over the world. But if we look at the basic math and the principle on which the visa office set the visa bulletin, which was done by a guy called Charlie Oppenheim up until the last month or so, or month and a half ago when he retired, the math that Charlie was using, that the visa office is supposed to use, is what I described. The number of visas, the capacity, and the number of people documentarily qualified. That's basically it. Okay. I hope that was useful, Saha. I'm sure you know most of that, if not all of that. But what's the phrase? I don't know if it'll, maybe I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, and that you already know all of that. But just thinking I'd cover that completely. Also want to answer this from Noyan, because Noyan's very helpful to people out in the community. I think I might be an exception with early submission and early DQ date without 2NL. Interesting. So May 13th submission, DQ September 17th, EU 5K, and still no 2NL. Ouch. Noyan, are you in? I don't want to say your embassy, because I think you may want to keep that private. That's the only thing. But it's probably because of capacity at your embassy, I would say. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see the numbers. It could be about to change. I hope that's true. In the next few days, we might see 1,000 2NLs come out. That's what I was really expecting that. And then I saw, 70 2NLs today, or whatever the number was. I'm like, I hope that isn't the batch that I was waiting for. And I hope that we're actually seeing a number of smaller batches, and then perhaps one big batch for February interviews. But by March, they'd better be doing 3,000 interviews a month. Otherwise, we're in trouble. Okay, so that should be it. I've spent a long time today. Thanks for all of you that endured this. Thanks to those of you that have waited up till 2 o'clock in the morning. I appreciate your time, and I hope some of the answers I gave were helpful to you. All right, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye now.